What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we have a very special guest, the Aprilia Tuareg. The Aprilia Tuareg. No, Google it. How to say Tuareg. That doesn't help. We're just gonna call it the Tuareg today. So this is the 2022 Aprilia Tuareg, and I am finally getting my chance to spend the day in the saddle with this motorcycle. I'm very excited about it. It is one of the newest entries to the middleweight ADV category. And I gotta say, what little I've ridden so far, it's making me even more excited for it. Let's dive on in. This video is sponsored by Flying Eyes. Their sunglasses are designed to fit comfortably under a helmet so you can ride all day without any pressure points, and they're virtually unbreakable. Their frames are backed by a lifetime warranty, and their lenses are covered for up to a year, which even includes scratches. I never ride without a pair, and if you want to pick yourself up a set, click that link down in the description below and use the code SPITE for 10% off your order. Okay, so clearly we are not where that previous shot was. We're actually here at AF1 Racing, which is a dealership here in Austin, and they have kindly opened up their demo fleet and used inventory for me to make content with, and that is why we actually have the Tuareg. So if you are interested in checking out any information about this motorcycle, click that link down in the description below. It's actually going to be to AF1's page that has all the information about it. So I actually have not ridden this motorcycle at all whatsoever. I've never ridden one in the past. I didn't even ride it around the corner to park it right here. I haven't even put a leg over this motorcycle. So I wanted to get, since this was such a cool opportunity, I wanted to get absolute raw first impressions. So we are going to dive in to this bike and just see how it goes. So throwing a leg over it for the first time, man, it feels nice and light between the legs, and the seat is pretty darn high. I don't actually have any bend in my leg, but I am flat footing. And it's not squatting super hard, so that's actually really nice. Let's boot it up, shall we? Pretty quiet, but yeah, I can feel that same 660 style engine. That is a good bit of power right there. Okay, cool. We're officially on the road with this bike, and since the first thing I'm doing is hopping on the highway, it's gonna allow me a minute to talk about just the initial ergonomics on it. And the wind blast is hitting me squarely in the face, which I'm not sure if this is adjustable. I'll have to check when we pull over. But it's a little bit choppy, I'm not gonna lie. You might be hearing it through the helmet. So as per usual with a lot of these adventure bikes, when you first get them, if you're a taller guy, you're going to probably need to adjust or change that. So we've gone a little bit down the road, just got off of 35 and onto 183. And the first thing that I'm noticing too, now that I'm just kind of cruising, is this is a super nice and neutral seating position. It is so comfy. And the seat is pretty darn wide too, right where you're sitting on it. It could stand to maybe, for me, be like a half an inch wider either side, but this is a really nice place to sit, and you've got a nice long bit of bike in front of you. I actually like when there's a bunch of stuff in front of me on ADV bikes. They just feel more substantial. And the torque is nice on this bike. It is very nice. I mean, it's that same, it's probably modified with different maps and different cams and stuff, but it's that RS660 engine, and man, is it just a nice power band out of this engine. It feels really good. The roll-on power is exactly what you'd want. It's just
you can get around a car nice and easy. And it's got cruise control. So, there we go, set, on. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the way Aprilia does their cruise controls. I find it a little bit weird from time to time. The fact that you have to go out on the button to turn it on, you press and hold it out to turn it on, and then you press and hold it over again to enable it. Normally it's like you push the button and then you hit set and it's down, so it's a little bit different. You got to get used to that on the Aprilias, but that's a small niggle. Overall, initial impressions are really nice, but let's get this thing on a twisty road and see how it feels. All right, twisty road time. Let's see how the Tuareg does, chucking it into some corners here. I mean, it's a modern, well-built motorcycle, right? So it's gonna handle corners great. The one thing I am noticing though, and it might just be the settings, because this is literally a brand spanking new motorcycle, so there's two things it could be. One is it's the way the lever's set up, and two, it's the brake pads haven't broken in. It doesn't feel like the two Brembos are biting as hard as they should. It might be because it's tuned more for off-road riding, but there have been a couple of times when, you know, I'm riding this like I'm riding more of a sport bike, which is kind of how I ride adventure bikes. You know, I'm hard on the front brakes, and it just feels like on this bike, it's got to be new pads, but it just doesn't feel like it's grabbing super crazy hard. Aside from that, I mean, the engine is perfectly playful. I love this 660 engine. I loved it in the RS 660. I haven't tested the 210, but I know it's going to be awesome. And then right here, it's a ton of fun. So this is doing great on your average twisty road ride. I just kind of wish the front brake had a little bit more in it. I'm actually, there's a spot over here that I'm gonna pull over into, and we'll see if I can't throw the brake lever out a little further and increase some of the feel. Okay, let me pop it into neutral. We're currently at 4. Let's see what happens if we switch it to 1. That's too far out. Let's put it at 2. All right, let's see how that does. Yeah, that's got a lot of torque. All right, diving it in with the adjusted brake. Yeah, that feels a little bit better. Yeah, okay, that's where I wanted it to be. Yep. So all you got to do is just throw the lever out a little bit further. On 4, it's just a little too close in. I have it set to 2 because 1 is really far. Probably 3 is the happy medium, but yeah, dipping it down. Now it's coming to a stop the way I would have expected. Especially if you're somebody like me who rides adventure bikes like big supermotos. You really want the front brake feel to be super predictable. You want it to be exactly the way you want it. And this is feeling a lot better right now, for sure. So, successful first twisty road ride. Let's go get this thing in the dirt and see how it slides. Oh darn it, would you look at that? The pavement ended. Oh man, that's fun. That is really fun. Okay, so the Tuareg is mounted up with these Pirellis, which I believe it's the Rally Scorpion that's on here. And that is, I'm finding a really, really nice tire. I've actually already done 2 laps in here, just because I wanted to get a feel for it before I turn the camera on, because it's hard to vlog and ride off-road at the same time. So, my initial impressions on the Tuareg are, I need to get used to it. So, the first thing that I noticed was, oh, good grief. So, as you're hearing, I'm actually kind of struggling a little bit with this bike. Now, I think there's two things that are going on. First of all, I think that the traction control is a little too sensitive. And secondly, I think that overall this like scree here, these loose rocks, the Pirellis aren't biting too hard. Because for an adventure tire, the Pirelli Rally Scorpion is actually really street biased. It works fine on like kind of this stuff right here, this sort of soft dirt stuff and light gravel, but over like actual rocks and stuff, I'm struggling a little bit to keep the tires on the ground. So I did end up cutting the engine power a little bit to help manage the tire slip. But let's see what happens if I go ahead and turn down some of the TC. I don't want to turn it off, I just want to turn it down. So we'll go to off-road, and you can see here, oh, I guess it didn't save. Now AEM is at 3 in off-road mode, and traction control, let's put that at, whoops, traction control, let's put that at 1. That's the least amount of intervention that I can get out of the traction control. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling the tires slipping a lot more now behind me, which is nice. The computer isn't stopping me from spinning that rear tire up. So hopefully that'll help when I'm going over all those rocks on the back side of this loop here. Because I like to be able to spin the rear tire, but I like a little bit of traction control. It's why I like Harley's off-road mode so much on the Pan Am, because it's got like the perfect mix of electronic assistance and letting you get wild with it. So, oh my God, that's so much better. Oh man. Okay, yeah, turning down the TC, the electronic intervention, and limiting some of the engine power. Holy cow, that made a huge difference going over this stuff. Oh, it's so much easier to ride now. Holy cow. You gotta love technology on this stuff, man. It makes such a huge difference. Oh, it makes such a huge difference. And you just saw me goofing around with it in real time. It's so easy to mess with on this motorcycle. Oh yeah, okay. This is a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun right here. You know, the suspension feels really nice in the stock setup. It's doing really good, and that sort of softer front brake feel, I get it now, because yeah, it's better tuned for off-road riding. Oh, go, Tuareg, go! Yeah! This is a lot of fun. I could get used to this, man. All right, well, before I ride this thing all the way to an empty gas tank, just doing loops in this here little spot, why don't we pull the bike over, have a conversation about some of the specs and some of my favorite and least favorite stuff on this motorcycle, because I've actually learned a lot about it in the first 40 miles that I've ridden on this bike, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's pull over and dive in.
So as usual, folks, I have not looked at the specs before I got on this motorcycle, but now that we're pulled over, I figured I'd take a look at them. We have a 659cc parallel twin in here with the 270-degree crank that is putting down 79 horsepower and 52 foot-pounds of torque. This motorcycle actually weighs in at about 419 pounds dry. So with all of the fluids, let's call it around 450 pounds, which is actually pretty good. That puts this right at KLR weight with twice the KLR horsepower. As somebody who's used to riding around on a donkey of an ADV bike, this thing is really nice and fun to goof around with. It's really nice to have the torque coming out of this engine too. Because this is an adventure bike, I am gonna throw the ground clearance at you. We have 9.5 inches of ground clearance with a fully adjustable suspension, and we have a 33.9 inch seat height. So mounting up on this motorcycle for a bit of an ergo check, the first thing that you're gonna notice is that the seat height is quite tall. There's no way to slice it. 33 and over inches, that's a tall motorcycle. However, when you're sitting on it, it's really not that big of a problem. If you're a taller guy like me, I highly recommend looking at adventure bikes as something for your street bike because they are so comfortable. I can easily flat foot this bike, and when I get my foot up on the peg, it's really nice and comfy. However, one thing that's cool is because this is an adventure bike, we do want to be able to stand up on it. And despite the fact that the camera is no doubt cutting off my head, I can actually stand up on this motorcycle quite comfortably. Now, rounding out the specs on this motorcycle, we have a really sophisticated technology package on here. The cool thing about this is, unlike the KTM, you get actually everything that's in the motorcycle and you don't actually have to pay anything extra for it, which is really nice. You can program ride modes, you can turn off the quick shift down, you can goof around with anything to your heart's content on this motorcycle, including turning off the auto headlight situation, which is kind of interesting. I actually haven't seen that on a motorcycle before. Now that gives me a nice segue into some of my favorite things on this bike, and honestly, the first thing I got to talk about are the looks. I think this motorcycle in person looks really, really cool. It's a very unique looking bike. It's like an Italian version of the Africa Twin. I'm really enjoying the looks on this thing. And despite the fact that they don't really show up well on camera, it's a cool looking bike in person. Another thing I love, the engine on this. Oh my God, this 660 engine. It's so good. It's so good in every motorcycle they put it in. It's great in the Tuono. It's great in the RS660, it's great here. If you want a nice, good parallel twin, look no further than this 660 right here. Yeah, it's not putting down as much power as the other ones, but honestly, if you're taking it off-road, you don't want a ton of horsepower. It's actually a lot more easy to manage something that has a little bit less. Now, one thing I don't love on this motorcycle, and I'm gonna spend a little bit more time talking about when we get into the commuting, is the windscreen on this bike. It is non-adjustable and it doesn't do a great job of throwing wind over my head. It's a big bummer that bikes like this nowadays are coming with non-adjustable windscreens. This is a bit of a black mark on the motorcycle. Last thing that I don't love the front brake feel. It's just, I know it's tuned for off-road riding, but when you get on this motorcycle, you can ride it like a big supermoto. So having a slightly softer front brake, it's not really confidence inspiring when you want to jam the bike down on that front brake and dive it into a corner. Because the other side of that coin is this motorcycle handles so well. I love the way this bike handles. But unfortunately, you can't really push it too hard because the front brake is just a little soft. You can dial it in a bit, but I'm finding at 2 on the adjuster, it's a little too far forward to be comfortable, and at 3, it's too soft for me to be comfortable. So I might look at getting a different lever or maybe bleeding the brakes and changing the pads on this because I am noticing that it has steel lines. Now let's kick this bike back out on the road because I want to see how it handles as a commuter. ADV bikes are one of the best commuter motorcycles out there from a stock package, and I want to see how this thing handles.
Okie dokie, so let's assume that you picked this thing up as a commuter because you've heard that ADV bikes are great commuter motorcycles. What can you expect from the Tuareg? Well, you can expect a pretty darn good commuting motorcycle, I'm not gonna lie. We've got a bunch of different modes here, which we're going to get into a second, but you know, the first thing is it's really comfortable, there's a ton of room, and it tracks a line just straight down the highway. And it's really stable too. You don't really feel like it's going to throw a bunch of tanks. Like I'm having a try, and it immediately straightens out if you're going to, you know, feel like you're getting a tank slapper. So I mentioned those rider modes. Let's dive into those real fast because there's a lot to talk about with them. So the first one we've got here is Explore, which this is like your, you know, gravel road mode. You know, maybe you're going down something that's not quite off-road, but you know, you might hit some gravel here and there. Explore mode's there for you. A little bit more traction control, interference, and a slightly softer power mode. Then we've got Urban, which is a little less traction control, and you know, it's a pretty potent map. It's kind of like your middle of the road commuter map. And then you've got off-road, which if you're commuting in off-road mode, hopefully you live in, like, you know, the middle of nowhere, because you have ABS off by default in the back. You do have your front ABS, and you can turn off traction control. So this is kind of like your getting fun, getting slideways mode here. And then you have individual, which this is the one where you can go in and program. You can go and change everything, but you know, if you want to set up a custom mode, individual is where you want to be. I currently have this to have basically the least interference in every mode and the most power while still having the nannies on. So I do have ABS, I do have traction control. They're just the lowest possible mode. And then the other ones are set from factory. Now, as we're rolling down the highway, the first thing I want to mention, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the things I liked and things I didn't like, the pros and cons section. Don't love the windscreen. It's a bummer that it's non-adjustable, first and foremost. And B, you can probably hear it. It's putting wind right at the top of my head. It's making it a lot louder than it needs to be, but if you duck down, it's nice and quiet. So if you're, you know, north of maybe 6 foot, maybe 5'9", between like 5'9" and 6 foot, which is, you know, a pretty big range, you might want to think about increasing your windscreen height just a little bit, because I need to be like down here to not really hear anything, and that's like 5 inches. Definitely gonna need to swap that out. Next thing, you do have cruise control as standard on here. I said it earlier, I don't love Aprilia's cruise control, but it works just fine. Totally functional. One thing that a commuter might want, especially if you're commuting into some of the colder months, is heated grips, and this does not have heated grips from the factory. Kind of wish it had them. I'm sure it's an option, but you know, this is a upmarket adventure bike with some technology on it. Go ahead and give me the heated grips. Now, 2 more things that I have noticed as I've been riding this thing around is, while the seat is comfortable for a little while, it's starting to get a little uncomfortable on me. I've been doing, let's see, how many miles have I put down today? I put down about 50 miles on this thing already, and the seat's getting a little bit uncomfortable. I tend to sit a little bit further back where the seat is wider, but you know, it's not. I would probably upgrade this seat to like a, you know, a Seat Concepts or a Corbin or something like that. Then the last thing, and this might matter to you, it might not, but it's something that I'm noticing, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. My right boot is getting really warm on this motorcycle, especially when I was going through some twisty roads and stuff. I was feeling a good bit of heat coming off the engine, and it was pouring it right on my right boot. So if you're wearing heavy boots or ones that don't breathe super duper well, you might find that the right foot is getting pretty sweaty, so you might need to get some lighter boots or figure out how to reroute some of the heat. I'm not sure if it's because there's this big bread box right underneath here where the pipes join, or whether or not it's just that's where the fan for the radiator is. But it is a slightly warm spot to sit. Now, with all that being said, let's pull this motorcycle back over one last time and do some Discord Q&A, because this bike is so new. I know for a fact that we're going to have a handful of questions on this motorcycle, and let's see how many I can answer in like 6 or 8 minutes.
All right, let's start out with one from Austin's Nicest Taco. How many pizzas can it carry on the back? Well, currently stock, it can carry no pizzas. However, you can get racks for this, and then you're gonna be able to strap whatever you want to this. You can even get bags from Aprilia if you wanted to go full ADV boy. Though if it were me, I would get the racks, and then I would just get some soft panniers to throw over this, and maybe like a top rack, and then call it a day. Diabetes Man asks, how is the engine versus Yamaha's parallel twin? I know Tenere 700s are unobtainium, but the engine is at least a known quantity. You're right, totally known quantity. Honestly, this thing, it feels very, very similar to that. It's less hopped up than what you see in the Tuono and the RS660, which is actually really nice. I said it earlier, you don't want a ton of power when you're going off-road because that's all just wheel spin after so much power anyway. So this is actually a really nice package, and I would say it compares very, very favorably with the Tenere. I have not, however, ridden it. I've only ridden the MT-07. I'm just assuming the Tenere feels like an MT-07. I ride a 10-speed. Is the intake honk as intoxicating as everyone says? Yup. It is really intoxicating. It is fun to whack the throttle on this and just hear it just suck in a ton of air. A lot of fun. It's a great noise. Don ATX asks, would you trust the reliability in the middle of nowhere as, say, compared to a Japanese bike? Honestly, I get a lot of people thinking Italian motorcycle unreliable, especially when it comes to the early runs of the RS660 where they had the connecting rod problems. Aprilia has done a lot to sort out that issue. That was just bad metallurgy as they were trying to make bikes in the pandemic. I would trust this bike assuming I took it through the break-in. Right now, since it's still, you know, brand new, this thing has almost 100 miles on, well, more than 100 miles on it now. I wouldn't immediately hit the road. I'd like to get it through the break-in period first, and then I'd feel pretty comfortable just chucking this down through the desert in Utah or wherever. Corgi asks, how would you compare this to the KLR 650? Is the pasta worth the squeeze? And would you rather have the Aprilia or unlimited Chick-fil-A for life? Let's answer that one first. I'd rather have the Aprilia than the Chick-fil-A, honestly. This thing is a ton of fun, and no sandwich is going to compare unlimited or otherwise. Now, as far as comparing it to the KLR, it's very similar in size with a lot more power. It's very similar weight-wise too. So to me, I mean, if I were going to upgrade the KLR, I would probably take a long, hard look at the Tuareg. But, you know, I feel completely comfortable just throwing my KLR at the ground. I haven't tossed one of these at the ground yet. So, and it would hurt me a little bit in my soul if I did. I don't care about the KLR. Largrub. You're gonna have to tell me how to pronounce that one. How does it stack up against the Tiger Sport 660 in your view? This is definitely more off-road biased than the Tiger Sport. This is really, I mean, I feel completely comfortable taking this thing off-road after I goofed around with some of the settings and stuff. I wouldn't necessarily chuck the Tiger off-road, the Tiger 660. However, if you're just cruising on the highway, the Tiger is probably gonna have a little bit more lightweight feel side to side because of this big stonking 21-inch front end on here. If it were my money though, Tuareg. Ride Red asks, is the Tuareg a good value ADV or is it worth stepping up to the 890 Adventure Africa Twin Tiger 900 offerings? Okay, so it really depends on what you're looking for, in my opinion. The Tuareg was designed to be this nice mix between the bare bones nature of the Tenere 700 and the super aggressive hard-nosed feeling on the 890. As far as the Africa Twin, this thing to me, it's this over the Africa Twin every day. I think this makes the Africa Twin perfectly superfluous. There's no point in keeping one around. By the way, word of the day, superfluous. And that's gonna round out the Discord questions. So let's get this thing back on the road one last time and start rounding out my thoughts on this bike.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie, it's really rare nowadays because of how many motorcycles I've ridden back when I was at Yami Noob. And even nowadays, it's really rare for a motorcycle that I've never ridden to kind of wow me, you know? I've experienced a lot that two-wheeled vehicles have to offer. And I don't want to be like, oh man, I know so much about bikes. I know nothing about motorcycles. I'm an incompetent wrencher to say the least, and I'm an incompetent rider. I can occasionally ride a motorcycle sometimes, but I'm by no means really skilled or anything like that. But this is a long way to say the Tuareg has really, really impressed me today. The engine has been an absolute treat to play with. The handling has been superb. I mean, is it the best handling motorcycle in the world? No, of course not. You know, it's just really good. That's all I can say. I can ride this thing like a giant supermoto, and that's kind of what I want. I kind of want this to be a big, stupid supermoto style motorcycle. The technology on this thing is fun, and it's easy to use, and it works really, really well. When I was goofing around off-road and I turned the traction control down, it was literally night and day how much different it felt. You know, it's by no means a perfect package, but no motorcycle is. The question I've been asking myself is, am I having fun on this bike? And honestly, it's just making me happy. Now, there were a couple of questions in the Discord Q&A that basically asked the same thing, and I wanted to answer it here because it would have given away what I think about this motorcycle a little too early. So, to those people who asked, is this a good jack-of-all-trades motorcycle, a do-it-all motorcycle? Yes. Yes, it absolutely is. It's a great choice. If you can only have one motorcycle and you want to go ride long distances, you want to do twisty roads, hell, you know what? I would even be willing to take this thing to a track day. You know, I probably wouldn't do it on the Pirellis. I'd probably try to find something slightly stickier, but the way this thing is handling, sure, I'd take it to a racetrack. You know, it's really rare for a motorcycle to tick all the boxes and not feel kind of sandblasted, like it's got no edge, it's got no character. This motorcycle actually excels kind of at everything, you know? Off-road, it's a lot of fun. I think I would probably be more comfortable, at least in the short term, because this is not my motorcycle. I would be more comfortable taking the KLR off-road, but I would definitely get to where I'm at with the KLR with the Tuareg, for sure. On-road, I'm not gonna lie, the more I've pushed this motorcycle, the more fun it got, you know? Yeah, the front brake feel isn't great, and that's something that I would have to address, but I think fresh pads and fresh fluid might help, or different pads anyway. But at the end of the day, there's just a lot of little niggles on this motorcycle, none of which subtract from the whole, and it makes this thing just a really great, well-rounded package. Actually, you know what? I haven't talked about the price at all about this motorcycle. I need to check the price. Well, hopefully I have reception out here, because I don't know what the price of this bike is. Okay, so little peek behind the curtain at how the sausage gets made. I don't run these videos with a script. I have a general structure that I adhere to, but no script. And I forgot to look up how much this motorcycle costs. So I did all of this video not knowing what this motorcycle cost. And I'm actually out in the middle of nowhere, and there's no cell reception, so I had to ride all the way through the hills to the point where I got cell reception and then come back to the road that I was on. And suffice it to say, this motorcycle is well worth every bit of its $12,000 asking price. I would argue that this thing was worth 14 grand. I was sitting there thinking as I was heading out to the hills, like, well, what the hell would this motorcycle cost? It's got a whole bunch of technology in it. Well, the tech's starting to trickle down. It's got this, you know, it's brand new. It's got all this fancy suspension and stuff. I bet it's probably like 13 or 14 grand. No, it's 12. It's cheaper than I thought it was going to be, which is awesome, man. I mean, my KTM was 11.7 new. I think it's still 11.7. If I was going to spend 11.7 on a motorcycle, I would just spend an extra $300 and get this. Straight up. I don't know what else to say other than Aprilia just sort of knocked the leather off the ball with this one. It's fun off-road, it's fun on-road, it's a good commuter once you deal with this. It's it's a great bike, guys. They just did a good job. Yeah, it's got some flaws, but what motorcycle doesn't, right? Now, obviously, a huge thank you to AF1 for letting me borrow this motorcycle for the day. If you are at all interested in checking out any of the information about it, a link to this bike will be down below. And a big shout out to Flying Eyes, the first sponsor for the channel. Guys, I thought really long and hard about bringing sponsors on. And one of the rules that I set was I'm only going to put a sponsor on the channel if I feel comfortable recommending what they make to you. And I absolutely do. I am currently riding in a pair of Flying Eyes sunglasses that I had before they were a sponsor of the channel. So if you're at all interested, click the link down below. Use the code SPITE, S-P-I-T-E, to get yourself 10% off. And yeah, I'm gonna continue to ride this motorcycle in the hills. I'm gonna take the long way back because I don't want to give this motorcycle up yet. Oh my God, I'm having so much fun with it. Oh, guys, I will catch you all in the next one.